To interview a couple young people who are involved in ministry, and God is doing some great things through them and in them, and I'm excited. I'm blessed to know them. So if Arlen and Cynthia, Isaak will come up. Woo! Hi. We got one mic, so you have to share, Cynthia. All right. So hey. So glad to have you guys. I don't know how many know what they've done, but Arlen and Cynthia are involved with a ministry called Light in Action in Brazil, and they have been for the past X number of years, we'll get into that a little bit, producing a project called Tetelestai, and it's a video project and a way to study the Bible, a way to evangelize. So they've been working on this for a long time. It's finally come out. It's been produced. It's you can get it on Amazon. But just knowing this young couple, I don't know, how long ago did we meet?
It was
10, 11 years ago.
11.
Anyway, just seeing what God's done with them is a blessing, and I'm blessed to just know them, and think of them kind of as family in Brazil. So why don't you guys, we kind of started last night, why don't you guys introduce yourself a little bit, let us know, especially the romance part, that was great. So to kind of get into that, yeah. So introduce yourselves and we'll go from there and where you got started.
Yeah, well, I was born in Canada. I grew up various parts of northern Canada. All the whole ice fishing, snowmobiling, ice hockey, that was my reality. My parents were with a mission involved in aviation, and that's how they actually ended up in Arizona. And after high school in Arizona, a couple years of community college studying to be a pilot, mechanic's license, I went up to Bible school in Wisconsin, and that's where I met this beautiful lady. So.
Well, my growing up years were completely different. I was born in Brazil, and my parents were missionaries reaching out to unreached people groups. And I do have a twin sister, and which was a very unique thing because the tribe that my parents worked in killed twins, like most tribes do. And it's out of fear. They think that one of the twins is an evil spirit who is imitating a child. So it was quite a testimony to the tribal people having two little twin babies in there. And so my parents moved later on to the base of this mission in central Brazil. And so my growing up years were playing in the rain barefoot and having little monkeys and things like that. Whereas Arlen's parents also were in ministry. They were working with First Nations people way up in Canada. And yes, we met in Wisconsin and fell in love on a missions trip.
So this is great. So you have a young girl from Brazil and a guy from Canada, and they go to Wisconsin to find each other. That's the Lord, huh? And last night it was a little bit more. They were a little bit more revealing. I was going to say Eric. Arlen shared that he was in, covered up and tons of clothing and tons of blankets, and Cynthia was running in the jungle naked because it's a little one, it's a little one, with a diaper. But they come from those two different climates, end up in Wisconsin, and that's where you guys met, right? At Bridal College.
Right there. Where bridal and missions are one.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys met, went on a missions trip, fell in love, and got married.
Yeah, right after we graduated in 2005, we got married. And we had kind of the focus, the vision on our hearts was, man, God's calling us. We want to get people who have never had a chance to hear the gospel, hear about who Jesus is. Why didn't God, hey, we'll volunteer. Let's go. Let's see where God can take us. And one of the darkest places, and one of the places we were aware of to us, was a country called Mauritania. It's in West Africa, just north of Senegal. And our kind of focus and desire was, hey, let's go there. It's like 99% Muslim, slave trade, almost all desert. Death sentence if you convert from Islam. And I don't think anyone's going to want to go there. So, hey, let's do it. Let's go. And so we got married with that's kind of the direction we were headed.
Okay.
But
her turn.
And then what happened was we signed up for a short 6-month video project. Thinking that we were putting our ministry on hold, our real ministry, to be able to help with this video project. Being that neither of us knew anything about film, And we recruited several of our friends who were also headed to the darkest places on the planet in order to take the gospel. And so a team of people who had a burden for unreached people got together to be a part of a short video project, but God totally exploded it and took us through his school of film, because we knew nothing, and started working through it. And all these many years later, and 11 episodes and 1,000 volunteer actors from 150 different churches, we've came to realize we were doing exactly what God wanted us to do in order to reach the darkest areas.
So that's how you ended up going back to Brazil, correct? So you went and began this project. That was a short one. I didn't know that. So, well, good. It only lasted 9 years. So I'm glad it was a short one and not a long one. But here's the thing. This project that these guys have done is amazing. And I would encourage you, if you've not even looked at it or whatever, get it. You can get it on Amazon Prime. It's called Tetelestai. You can download it, you can watch it, you can use it as tools to, but anyway, we'll get more into that. But for these guys to do, it's so well done. And they blow my mind. About the time you guys were really starting to release it, I don't know how many of you remember on TV there was the series The Bible. It stunk. I'm sorry. If you liked it, I'm sorry if I offended you. It stunk. The actors were not good. The storyline, they forgot to follow the Bible, called the Bible. And everything about it, I thought, was just poorly done. And it was a multi-million-dollar project. The people that had the money put millions into it. These guys put $6 in theirs, and a little bit more than that. But man, it is 100 times better. So if you did like the Bible, watch theirs and you'll really be blessed. So you did this little short project with locals. This is a great story. These guys that were doing the Bible project had professional actors, etc. You two were part of the first star of it, right? In the Garden of Eden?
Cynthia could have pulled off Eve, yeah.
Yeah.
They got to get a better looking at him, though.
But you guys narrated a lot of it, did a lot of it, and then you used locals.
Right. It was amazing. Showing up, we'd go to a church, and we'd show a little clip of some of the teaching and kind of explain the heart. Hey, we want to be able to illustrate what's being taught, and we're just looking for people who can volunteer. And over the course of it, I don't know, over 1,000 people filmed, and in kind of our database probably had up to a couple thousand people who volunteered to, hey, I'll be a part of this. And like our type of volunteering too was, you're going to take off your weekend, okay? You're going to pay for your own gas. So they'd fill up a car, fill as full as they can get, 5 people, whatever it will hold, divide up the gas, get as low as they can, drive 2-3 hours to the filming location, bring their own food, bring their own lunch, and we would provide the raw cotton outfit that they could sweat in and almost get heat stroke all day long. And they would be there. And, we'd just like, praise God, I'm so glad they showed up today. They probably won't be back again, But after a whole day of filming in the sun, sweating, these people would just come back and, hey, when can I film again? When can I be a part of this? And just seeing this desire in them of like, I want to be a part of something that's bigger than myself. I want to be a part of something that's getting the gospel out. And this is exciting. I get to play a role. I get to stand out here. I get to be an actor. And just seeing their heart and their desire in that, just to be a part of it, was amazing.
When we moved to the region that we live in Brazil, we didn't know a single soul. I'd grown up in Brazil, but in a completely different region. We then moved our team thousands of kilometers to a region that looks like the Middle East so that we could do this filming. And it had the perfect scenery from lookalike Mount Sinai to Jordan rivers. It was perfect. What we didn't know when we moved there was that God was also giving us people with the perfect facial characteristics to double as Middle Eastern people. But not only that, we filmed them. We had no idea that their culture was identical. all I knew was Brazilian culture was my culture. I did know it was vastly different than North American culture. We always talk about people's personal space and how much you can touch someone. As North American, your personal space is probably 4 or 5 feet away. A Brazilian will feel comfortable sitting next to someone like this and maybe even having a conversation like this with them, which would really drive a North American crazy. But being able to film the Brazilians in Brazil acting as Middle Eastern people, only when we went to the Middle East and had a finished product and were showing it to Middle Eastern people, did they keep saying over and over again, this is us, this is us. I can't believe that you didn't film this here. And when we were on the streets of Cairo and Egypt, it was uncanny. Arlen and I kept looking at each other and saying, this is so bizarre. Don't you feel like they should be speaking Portuguese? So weird, the way that people interact. And God knew, and he put us in the exact right place, because you can't have actors fake another culture. You can't have volunteers do that, maybe professionals, but you can't have volunteers fake that. And it was amazing.
And I think one of the things with all of this is the famous hindsight looking back of what God did. Going into it, this wasn't like our great strategic plan and all of our, perfect choices and planning going forward. It's just being obedient to what God had and looking back and being like, oh my goodness, wow, Lord, like what you had set up was like way beyond what we ever imagined.
And we had talked last night about the difference in the fact of their volunteering, and they're more open, they're freer, they're not like North Americans. You made that comment and got in trouble, but
yeah, I know.
People got mad through stuff, but no, they didn't. But talking about the difference, the fact that these people are just more embracing of what they're doing, and they're just volunteers, they're not paid. And that one story you told, you got to tell that.
Well, one of the examples I love of just some cultural differences in volunteers is we filmed in showing Jesus' power over death. We told the story of the widow of Nain. So as they're bringing down, they have the guy, and it's actually funny too. It's one of the translations, he's laying on a bier, right? Bier, however you say that, stretcher. And one of our kids heard it, and he says, and Jesus went up and touched the bier. He's like, he didn't touch his beard. But Jesus goes up and touches it, and then he grabs the guy by the hand, tells him to get up. And after the son is resurrected from the dead, the Bible says that Jesus gave him back to his mother. I don't know what you envision what that could look like, but we have our son actor who we chose, younger guy, 16, 17-year-old tall dude, and this other widow, total different tryout lady, complete strangers. They don't even know each other's names. They don't even go to the same church. And we didn't even, I don't even thought through of like how to rehearse to tell them, okay, this is kind of how this reuniting needs to happen. I don't even remember going through that. Maybe we didn't. But the lady comes over, he walks right over to her, and she just like grabs him and kisses him and hugs him and rubs his hair and kisses him and loves him and da-da-da. And that's how Brazilians interact too. Just that type of affectionate, touchy-feely culture.
Yeah, without the script,
yeah.
Without rehearsing.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so you had a lot of those things. So what I'm hearing from you guys is you had this short project in mind that turned into a lengthy project and a huge project, but you never looked at this thing. You didn't go into it looking at, we're going to produce this 11-part series, phenomenal thing. It grew. And, I like, last night you used the term organic, which is one of my favorite terms, because everybody wants to be intentional, and I want to be organic. But as you're doing that, as you just saw it do that, are you amazed now, sitting here, Arlen and Cynthia, and God used, you and your others involved, the team, to do this project that is huge?
It is amazing, and it was amazing all throughout it. There were so many miracles and so many God moments. He brought along exactly what we needed when we needed it. I always tell people about just as we're planning different shots, not having any idea of how it's going to actually happen. and then God bringing along just the right people in just the right places. And I remember, we live in a very arid region, and I know you can understand that because you live here in Arizona, but this is arid with money. And it's different when you see arid with no money and dead cows on the road and things like that. But when we went to film the scene of the calming of the sea, we had to go out to a distant location to actually find a large body of water. And when we got there, it was perfect. And some of these places, it hasn't rained for like 5 years. So we got all of our disciples in the boat because this was already the calming of the sea. We'd already filmed them out actually in the sea on a spit of land with waves crashing against them. This was the calming of the sea. We had a different location. And they're in the boat. They're soaking wet. We're rehearsing that Jesus is going to step into the boat. They're all going to worship him. And in the middle of all of that, God sent a massive storm, thunder and lightning and wind, and we actually took everything down. We thought it was going to rain, and the rain came right up to where we were, and then it circled the lake and made this stunning backdrop of storm clouds and rain, and had whipped up the water, and all of our disciples are now shaking and wet and trembling, and it was almost stunning to see. Get back in the boat, turn on the cameras, and it's an untouched scene when you watch it. People who work in the world of media will say, now how did you guys do the background, and what 3D effects of this and that? And while we do have 3D in our series, this is an untouched scene that the director put together. And it was amazing all throughout the series to see God's miraculous hand in this, and it was beautiful. The fellowship was incredible. These people would sleep on the floor of whatever church that was hosting us in this little area. There's no air conditioning. Oftentimes there's no fans. We'd make breakfast together. There'd be tons of praise and worship and praying. And anytime something would go wrong, we'd stop everything and pray together. And it was an amazing experience.
I think for me too, when you mention organic and just how God has worked, comes back to mind just recently we were on a trip these last 3.5 months. Covered over 19,000 miles through Canada and the United States. 107 days, you said, traveling. And just on this trip, in the last 3 months, the things that God has done, the different people, some were on our schedule and some weren't, and who God brought along. I got to sit down for over 4 hours to hear some of the first believers from Turkmenistan. It's a country over there. What part of Asia? North of Afghanistan, that area. Crazy dictatorship. Look it up. Google Turkmenistan. It's crazy. And the control. But we're sitting there talking with some of the first believers of that country, and they're excited about how we can take Tetelestai, how we can dub it into Turkmen and Uzbek. And they work with satellite, which beams into the country. You don't pay for it. It's not like you have to have a contract and stuff. It's open. And these people are watching and getting information, hearing the gospel being discipled. So these guys are excited about it. We travel further in Minnesota. We drop off a hard drive for a ministry called Project Video. And they want to dub Tetelestai into 28 minority languages in the area of Southeast Asia, within Thailand, Cambodia, Myanmar, southern China, Laos. And this is what they do. They want to put resources into the hand of the church. People groups that don't even have the Old Testament translated into their Bible. They don't have it in their language yet. And being able to see the whole story of redemption come together, they're just excited about it. They're very excited. And being able to talk with another ministry, reconnect relationships they want to dub into Ukrainian and Russian and Urdu, to broadcast. Urdu is the main language of Pakistan, western part of India. Being able to meet with other ministry that oversee major evangelism and church planning among deaf. And we want to work together to get Tetelestai adapted into, they work with Chinese, Arabic, Russian, of course, American Sign Language. There's like 6 major ones. And that one wasn't even on our schedule, and God had it worked out. And it's exciting to see the whole body of Christ. It's from the beginning to the end working together, and just God bringing along these different opportunities. Oh yeah, and a Nigerian couple just happened to be at a house we're going to stay at. They're leaders in a mission from Nigeria, and they're watching it, and they're like, Yeah, for 3 years. They tried to get to the U.S., tried to visit the mission training base. And it just happened to work out that they were there at the same time that we were there. And we were with our co-worker Joel, his parents, at their house. And they were there having the meal. They were showing them Tetelestai. No, this will be wonderful. We can have this and, put it in Hausa. And then we will go. And they want to do 50 languages in Nigeria over the next few years. So things like that, just like, you see God's grace and just see God moving, God's hand at work, and like, all right, Lord, I want to be faithful.
Cynthia's got some.
A few months ago, some of you may remember, there was a guest speaker that spoke on Jonathan. It was in December, so it was a long time ago. If you don't remember, Jesse Claycamp spoke on Jonathan going up with his armor bearer and facing the Philistines. Does anybody else remember that? Okay, good job, Matt. Brownie points for you. That's awesome. Rose, yes. Dr. Kasenga. But we remember well because we were sitting in the front row bawling. We had finished Tetelestai, and God was really laying it on our hearts to be able to do it organically, to be able to work through distribution without using commercial distribution. And it was a very scary thought because our heartbeat was to get it into the hands of unreached peoples. But we didn't have the funds for that. And yet commercial distribution is focused on areas where people have already been reached. And we were about to say no to commercial distribution, which is a very heady thing to have the professionals ready to sign with you. And to say no to that seemed like an insane move. And Mr. Claycamp was up here speaking, and he had no idea who we were. It was the Holy Spirit speaking through him. And he was talking about Jonathan and David. I mean, not David, but Jonathan and God. And he said this. He said, maybe today God is telling you to do something crazy that doesn't make sense. You need to do it, because if you don't, you're going to miss out on the miracle. And my whole passage of 1 Samuel 14 is like all wrinkly from being soaking wet that day. But that was essentially the time when we gave it up and we said, okay, God, we know we want to get it into these people's hands, but we don't know how to do this. So all these people that Arlen has mentioned are people that God brought to us that have the potential of doing lip sync dubbing, which is very expensive. It is a professional process of being able to dub it into a different language, and they're looking for resources, and they're already on the front lines, and we get to partner with them to be able to give them our resource. So it just blew our minds.
So as you move forward, you were here as it was finishing up, and you're finishing up writing the books, right? Writing and getting those produced, the study guides.
Right.
And so you've got those produced, you've got the product produced, you worked on some distribution, you got that kind of in the works.
Yeah.
So now, what's the next step for you guys?
Well, as far as the light has shown, there's a couple different areas. For us, personally, our next step will be going back down to Brazil on the 4th of October to kind of help with the main purpose of they're getting Tetelestai dubbed into Portuguese right now. Should be done hopefully by November. And kind of continue the same work of being able to connect with ministries and people who are in the middle of the Amazon, up those little tributaries there. Get this into their hands as they gather these communities around and help them understand the gospel. People who are working in slum areas, people who are just, even evangelism in the cities and urban settings, and getting this into their hands, and hopefully getting this on TV too. There's so many places, nowadays they probably already have internet on their cell phones, but they also have a TV. You can have a shack that's made out of cardboard, and they have a TV and a stereo system. And it's like, we get it into those, how can we get it so they can have exposure to this? So that's kind of what we're wanting to spearhead. But along with that too, our whole team is continuing to produce other resources that are going to be either taking the stories, what God's doing overseas, and bringing them back to encourage and help mobilize the churches, or creating films in which can help open the door amongst these unreached people groups, causing the questions, beginning to stir within their hearts. And they've already just finished actually producing one in conjunction with the ministry called Iran Alive, about a true story Iranian security officer and how God used satellite TV and just the pastor and the teaching, his curiosity, his sister, and different circumstances, and how he came to faith, and God used him even in that position still today in helping actually protect and helping the church grow and expand there in Iran.
Okay, so I want to back up a little bit because I forgot this part, and I think this is a great part. You mentioned the director.
Yes.
That's your dad, isn't it? Yeah? No?
No.
Well, when I said the director, I was talking about God.
Oh, you meant God. But you talk about having a team and different people. When I was there, your team was small, not large. I don't think it's grown a lot, has it?
No.
So you have this, when they say team, they're talking like 10 people. They're not talking like 50. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, people come and go. So, but, not this huge, you're thinking, when you watch this film, you're thinking there was a ton of people behind it. And these guys, and my favorite part, one of them is Joel. I got to meet Joel. I've been down there with him. I got to meet Joel, and Joel is this really kind, nice guy who's the cameraman who has years and years and years of experience with camera work, right?
Now he does.
But he had none, right?
None before.
I mean,
no.
he's just picking things up and watching this guy do makeshift gimbals and stuff to do filming, right? I think, and you would think it was done by these people with all this professional equipment, and his was duct taped together. I loved it. Well, not quite that bad, but I mean, I just love those kind of stories.
Yeah, it is.
That's who you guys used, and that's how this thing got done, which shows me that, as we get ready to serve the Lord, sometimes we think that, well, how could he use me? What would I have to offer? And I don't know why Joel sticks in my head, but he does. I mean, he just brought his ability to, put things together and see through a camera, and God used him.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful part. Like Joel's, no previous experience. Most people on our team, it wasn't I'm graduated in cinema, I've done film school, how can I use all this, to serve God, which is a great thing. It's a great way to perspective, but it was just coming at it like, okay, Lord, here we're at, and just following in obedience to what God had, and relying upon God's enabling to perform what he is calling you to do. And knowing, okay, he's going to in-gift. And I think one of the phrases I like too, a lot of it is supernaturally natural. It's not that Joel just stands there and goes, okay, here's the shot kind of thing. It's hard work, it's studying, and it's going at, but at the same time, it can totally see how God works in your heart and your mind. Like, no, this is not right. Let's do it like this. Let's change this up. Let's do this way, with the clothing, the set, whatever. And just that complete reliance and dependence upon God and working in all the different areas. And just stepping out, being faithful and being obedient. It's been amazing.
And your sister, the costume designer, right?
Yes, my twin sister did the costume designing, and their costumes are phenomenal. I mean, when you look at, we live in an area that you can get raw cotton right there, and it's like hammock material, and they aged everything, buried it, greased it up. By the time the person puts it on, they look like they had it for 10 years. And it's very authentic looking. We used all real things, so everybody grew their own beards, grew their own hair, no makeup. It was amazing. It was absolutely incredible. But my twin sister Stephanie also did all of the special effects makeup, which means the blood and the guts and the aging and the scars and leprosy. And today, both Joel and Stephanie and Johnny and different people on our team have other people that come to them to learn how to do things. But it was hard work, and it was trying and experimenting and tutorials and YouTube and actually just doing it and praying it through, and God empowering them. And it was amazing to watch, wasn't it, Arlen? It's just incredible to watch the different things that God enabled them to do.
Thank God for YouTube.
Yes, thank God for YouTube. That's right.
You can learn a lot. But so I want to focus on the fact that obviously a God project. God got this done, and yet he takes two kids that met in Wisconsin, and they get married, and then your families, and come together to produce this and put this thing together. And I like what you said last night, Arlen. When you even started, you weren't thinking, I'm going to go do this thing. Right. And how God let that work in you and let that slowly as he changed your vision in your heart, you didn't go into it thinking, I'm going to do movies.
Right. No, I mean, like I mentioned, my direction I was headed was to be a pilot, missionary pilot. Had my private pilot's license, got the mechanics. And if you ask me what my passion was, love flying, love airplanes, love that. I still do. The best house for us is the one right by the airport. You get to watch all the planes, right? But just going down there, and like Pat had mentioned, and God completely redirecting our lives, even together, and even what roles we could play. And there was struggle. Sometimes it was frustrating. Like, God, what in the world? Why am I here? What am I doing? What's my part? What do you mean I'm not? And just God's just moving and just being faithful, being obedient, being trusting, coming to Him and saying, all right, Lord, being, open. What's the word? Oh, yeah, available. That's the right word. I was thinking Portuguese, sorry. But just being available to what God had. And as you do that, though, God will begin to also change your heart when you step out in faith. If you ask me today, I am way more passionate, and just amazing how you can use media and film to impact people's lives and hearts for the truth and for good. And just in that form, I love even the creation of film, and it's exciting to be a part of today. But as God, it took time, and just stepping out, and it's by faith, and God will enable you, and God knows why He created you, what He created you for. And just walking in obedience, being a living sacrifice daily in His hands. It's nothing better.
I think another thing too, we often are scared because, especially when you hear somebody tell a story like this, like, oh shoot, like you set out to be a pilot and then you made movies? Like, how did you know that that's what you're supposed to do? God loves you so passionately, and He really does want you to know His will even more than you want to. And it isn't that mysterious. He just wants you to surrender yourself to Him. And I love what one pastor once said. He said, you see a need and you just go and you try. Like Pat was talking about yesterday, setting up projectors and lights and plugging stuff in and serving in that capacity. You should serve in every capacity every time you see a need, and you will eventually find out what God wants you to do. It isn't like this whole I don't want to go teach Sunday school. I don't want to sweep. I don't want to try this. Try everything. Just offer for everything, and God will direct you. What He doesn't want is you to sit there and hope that it hits you over the head. He wants you to be willing to serve Him and say, here's my hands, here's my feet, where's the need? And just go, and He will direct you. He will guide you.
You know what, Arlen, you had mentioned earlier, and I think it's important that God works supernaturally, naturally. And as we naturally put ourselves in a place of being available, God will supernaturally then guide and direct us. And, again, just thinking how He's able. And, there's an old saying, it's easier to steer a moving car than one that's sitting still.
So. I love the story of Gideon because of the supernatural aspect. And yet, over the last few years, another verse leaped out at me, and I can't remember exactly how it goes, so this is the Cynthia paraphrase. But after the whole breaking the jars and the trumpet sound and the Midianites essentially attacking each other, farther on, the verse goes on to say that Gideon's troops pursued them to the point of exhaustion. And God brought that out to me, like, that is what He wants. He will supernaturally be moving, but it's going to take every single drop of you. You need to surrender yourself completely. It's not sitting down somewhere and saying, God, just move supernaturally. He says, yes, I will, and it's going to take you being a living sacrifice.
All right, so, what I wanted to touch on also is, so we have Light in Action. We have 7 people, did you say? 6 or 7 or
6
8,
or 7,
10.
yeah.
So, okay.
We're trying to use marriage to expand our team, but it backfired.
Marriage and babies, I've noticed. Yeah. So
Our volunteers all kind of got married.
So let's. I guess this is going to be a very pointed question. Is there room in Light for Action from somebody from here?
Sure.
No, Cynthia's thinking, I can't believe he just asked that.
Actually, Matt, who's standing there in the back, who's doing the sound booth, he went down there for 3 months, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
At least it was for us. I don't know about how it was for Matt. But He was incredible. He's actually, there's scenes that he was there. The one that we filmed till like 3 in the morning, and the betrayal. I can't remember if you were part of any other ones. Do you remember? Yeah? He was. But he was awesome. But if you ask him what he did, a lot of the time, he was doing tons of very servant-hearted things. And he was serving and he was helping, and it was freeing other people up to be able to do other things. There's always, we do have on our website a place that you can go and you can actually fill out a form and volunteer for something. And you can come and be a part of something for a few weeks or a month or whatever. But if that's something that you're interested in, or you think that someone in your family, maybe you're retired, or maybe you're just out of high school, if you want to come and see life.
Or maybe you're middle-aged.
Or maybe you're middle-aged, that's right. If that's something that God's laying on your heart, you can come and see things firsthand. You just can't be afraid of bugs.
Oh. So, as you guys are getting ready to go, you mentioned you're leaving October 4th. How can we, as a body here, now that we all know you, how can we pray for you as you go forward?
Go ahead.
I think I'm going to say a classic, but it's wisdom. Definitely each step of the way, decision making, seeing continuous sensitivity to God's voice as you just see where he's leading and guiding and stepping through. It helps a lot, that principle of looking back and seeing what God has done, how he has provided, how he has moved people's hearts, how the doors he has opened, and when you look forward and you just don't know how it's going to work out, and just being able to take those steps of obedience and trust and knowing, I don't know what the result's going to be, but let's just keep following God and keep being faithful. And especially just relying upon him, relying upon his grace each step of the way.
On a practical action point of something that you could do as well is we have a little table in the back. If you can sign up with your email, then you can get more specific prayer requests that we can send out. Even though we're not very good at sending out regularly, we will send you out and be like, hey, pray, we've got this. And it would be awesome to have more people praying. And when you can take a second to jot us back an email, it always makes our day. That's a very practical thing. A second thing that's something that would hugely benefit us is if you do have Amazon Prime and you do plan on watching Tetelestai, if you would like to do a focus group is essentially a group that's committed to give feedback later. See us later at our table because we're collecting feedback from all of North America. We partnered with people like Athletes in Action, Teen Challenge, people were using it in prison, people using it in small groups, one guy using it with his Muslim coworker, and they don't even live in the same city. His coworker lives in New York and he lives in Houston, and then they get together online and talk about it. If you're committed to doing a focus group and then giving feedback, to maybe say you want to do it with your next door neighbor. It's an evangelistic series, so it introduces them to Christ. Or maybe your niece, or your grandfather, or someone. See us later at the back and we'll give you more information on that. That will help us a lot to be able to gather in more information on how it's working.
So, and as we started this, I did not mention this, but I'm sure a lot of you know, but Arlen and Cynthia are really part of our church. They're not outsiders coming in. You guys have been in and out for a few years, and then you've been here for a while, this trip. So, they're family, so remember, they're part of our family as they're leaving, and we don't want to just, bye. So, and I know they're faithful to send email prayer requests. So, because I get them. So, yeah, they're faithful that way. So, hey, thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, Pat.
And thank you for sharing with us. And I'm praying that this will really bless you guys and encourage you.
Thank you also for being family. Our 4 children have fallen in love with Calvary during the time that we've gotten to be here for more extended time. Usually it's only a month at a time, in and out over the last few years. And this time we've got to be almost a whole year stopped here, and it's going to be hard for them to go back because now they're leaving a lot of good friends like Gabe, who's sitting in the front row next to our littlest Joshua. And so pray for them as well. It's been wonderful. We thank every single Sunday school teacher and CKC person who works over there, and everybody's hard work of all the people who volunteer. we've gotten to know tons of people from the coffee shop and the greeters, and they've become part of our family as well.
Yeah, same thing. Thank you guys so much. We've been so blessed by the body here. Yes. Yes, we'll take Calvary Chapel, and we still watch online. And just want to thank you guys so much for being a part of this, for all of your prayers. And we felt so loved and embraced throughout this year here, too. It's been amazing. So we're very, very grateful.